labs that we began calling them. The first one was designed to use this same process, but in a way that was designed for resolving larger system issues. And I'll just walk through this very, very quickly, and we can talk about it in detail later if you're interested. But it's the same essential 3 steps, which is observing and presencing and realizing. But in this particular process of the innovation lab, there's a convening phase here. There's diagnostic data gathering. There's what we call deep structure interviews, and a series of foundation workshops to help people learn to suspend their judgment, the way that we talked about earlier. Learning journeys. And then an innovation retreat, which is usually 7 days long, with 4 days and 3 nights out in nature, preparing people for that and coming out of it, where we have a process where people normally come up with anywhere between 100 and 200 breakthrough type solutions to the challenge that has been identified at the beginning. And then we have a way that we crystallize these down into 4, 5, some workable number of issues that they're going to deal with. And then we put them into the rapid cycle prototyping dimension that we talked about, which usually takes around 6 weeks, sometimes more to do. And we break them down into small teams. If there's 30 people in this in this leadership lab, we'll break them down into teams of 5, and we'll put a guide with them, and they will go through what we call mini MINIUs, time and time and time again every day. And they're in this skunk works type of environment where they're coming up with a living example of what they've dreamed up out of whole cloth in this presencing retreat. And then we have them present to a venture committee that has been formed by champions in the early stage. And they're the people with the money and the interest and the capacity to actually make these innovations come true and put them in a more manifest reality if they agree with them. So it's like a normal venture capital firm, but they're presenting to this venture committee. Usually we'll present 5 breakthrough solutions, and perhaps 2 or 3 will pass the committee, and those will then go to the implementation. These presentations are sort of 0.8 models. They're not working models yet, but if they pass the venture committee, it's usually a 1-year pilot stage, and we put those on the ground. And from that point on, they take it to scale if it works. Now, what I want to do very quickly is just to show you. I think I've turned this off. Show you the first 2 of these that we have put together. And I won't talk about them at length, but I'll just give you the essence of them. The first one is the Sustainable Food Laboratory, which is a multi-continent operation to create sustainable food supplies between Central America, the United States, and Europe. And the conveners of this particular lab included Peter Senge's Seoul, the Sustainable Institute, which is located in Vermont, which was founded by Donna Meadows, W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and Generon, our firm. Now, it took us 2 years to put this, to convene this group, because you had to get the resources together and explain everything. The next time it did not take quite as long. We hope it'll get easier as we go along. But today there are about 85 participants in this food lab, producers, buyers, policymakers. We've been through the first phase of this lab, and we're now in the second phase, which is taking significant solutions that they've sort of come up with, and we're taking them to the next stage now. Some of my partners here in the audience will be able to speak much more, and Tom could be able to speak to this in a much more detailed way than I can. But that's the first key example. The second one is one called the Partnership for Child Nutrition, which actually came about as a result of a talk that I was giving in San Diego one day, and a young person from Unilever, 35-year-old, sort of high potential, came up to me and said, "We need to talk." Instantly, sort of, I knew that I had to talk to this guy. Sat down for 3 or 4 hours with him, at the conclusion of which he said, "Someday we will do one of these key labs together." And he walked off and disappeared. About a year later, I was given another talk in Finland, and I didn't know who he was, but it turned out to be this young man's boss, who I was introducing, and we did a sort of a joint, conversation together, I guess you'd say. At the conclusion of which, he said, "This whole thing about the U process that you've been talking about is what my young high potential guy, Rob Sherlakens, told me about." And he said, "I think we need to do business together." And I said, "Okay, we'll sit down and talk." And he said, "I'm in charge of 17 countries in Asia." And he said, "I spent a lot of time in India and Indonesia, and I spend some time in Africa. And I am deeply concerned about the issue of child malnutrition." And he said, "There are many millions of young children from the ages of sort of 0 to 6 years old who are dying today of malnutrition, and fully 1/3 of them are in India." He said, "I would like to use this process, take it to scale, and see if we could not have a significant effect on child malnutrition, first in India, and then take it to other countries." And we sat down and formed what's known as the Partnership for Child Nutrition. Again, did the convening, put together Synergos, which is a very significant civil society organization, UNICEF, which we all know, and Unilever, which is Tech's company, used them as the key conveners, and decided to begin in the state of Maharashtra, which is where Bombay is, and spent maybe a year and a half putting this whole thing together, which launched mid-year last year, with the intention of reducing child malnutrition in India 50% by 2015. And we gathered many participating institutions, civil society, business, and government institutions, some of the really key players in India. And this is the actual first time that these players from all 3 sectors gathered together to do anything about any major social issue. It's just sort of against the way that they've learned to operate in India. And there were huge learnings here in both the food lab and the India PCN lab. And we are now in the second stage of this, having come up with 4 or 5 key innovations, which are now going to be taken to the next level. And that work will start in about 6 months. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and we're going to start our dialogue. I'll just end by saying that our intention in Generon and in the formation of the Global Leadership Initiative is to work with these various partners that have emerged in the last year and a half to address ourselves to the most complex issues facing the world today, the sort of issues that John mentioned, and to do everything we can to use this process and others to help resolve those. I, just from a personal standpoint, feel that I've been preparing myself almost all of my life to do this. That destiny has sort of brought me here to this place where we are, that we're at a time, a moment in history that John has described, where we are facing catastrophic failures, and that we have to do something completely different than we've been doing before. And I feel privileged to be sort of at the center of this with all of my partners and these players here to help do what we can. And my deep feeling here is that surely we will not fail. Thank you very much. I look forward now to the dialogue. Thank you.